This is me, head of music and podcast, but I've spent a lot of time on podcast now, so I should be able to give you a couple of thoughts here. I think let's start with a little bit of history, saying Spotify was one of the late entrants to the podcast business. We started about 5 years back, and we had a lot of catching up to do. So which is why initial years we spent making sure that there was adequate catalog on the platform. We invested a lot on original content, and plus one of the biggest things that we did was made sure that our platform and the user interfaces were like awesome for users to come to, listen to, and enjoy podcasts. It's been quite a journey so far. We are number one in a lot of key markets around the world. We have 5 million podcast titles. Gautam mentioned earlier 5 million. Yes, all the 5 million are here. But moreover, I think the biggest number that keeps astounding me is that 500 million people across the world have heard a podcast on Spotify. That's an amazing number. So that's where we are till now. We came to India about 4 years back. We've done a whole lot of content here as well. And in the last 2 panels, almost everyone on stage had something to do with Spotify, and we continue to work very closely with them. And that's what we are here for. Like, we're here to drive this flywheel. And that's what we are looking to do, and we've been doing, and we are looking to do in the next few years in India, is that, look, we have to drive the flywheel, all of us, because, yes, there is content and creators, but they need to find their audiences. And we need to monetize the audiences so that creators get enthused enough and continue creating. We have a lot of audiences on Spotify by virtue of our music platform, and a lot of them, so they come for the music and stay for the podcast. So that's the kind of flywheel we are building. Before we move on, let me kind of throw it open to you guys. What are the podcasts that you are listening to? You can just shout out. Tech. Any names? Empire. Indian? Hidden Brain. Indian Clip. Anyone else? Anyone listening to a Tamil, Hindi, Malayalam, Marathi, Desi crime podcast, Spanish podcast, German? We have actually 13 Indian languages in which content is created and comes onto Spotify. Of course, German, Spanish, Korean, Italian are big languages which are heard in India. But just a quick sample says that, look, we have an eclectic mix of podcasts that people listen to. There is no 1 or 2 hero podcasts that people listen to. So the game of super hits doesn't hold here, because each podcast builds a very distinct community for itself, and that's what people listen to, people go for it. Moving on. So who's listening to these podcasts? On Spotify, the majority of the listeners are Gen Z and millennials, which is why the kind of content we see is super diverse. It is, yes, self-help, it is, yes, but it's influencer talk as well. People just want to know a little bit more about the lives of their favorite personalities, celebrities, and they come there and listen to it. A lot of it is about knowledge and learning. Almost half the listening that happens is about knowledge and learning, and across a large number of or a huge spectrum of knowledge and learning. Global audience and Indian diaspora. Yes, with Spotify, you can reach globally. So Indian content is heard across multiple countries. Of course, we have diaspora across the world. So, I mean, your content reaches there. And finally, local content. I think India is, as you know, India has like huge diversity of languages. Indians like to consume entertainment in their own languages. A lot of Indians are consuming podcasts in their own languages. Like Tamil market is massive. Bengali market is massive. So you see huge diversity of languages. And with languages, we see a huge diversity of the kind of content that works in each market. And that's the beauty of it because we get to see all of that on Spotify along with the numbers. Um, for advertisers, so we did some research. This is global research. But what we saw that 2 in 3 podcast listeners pay more attention to podcast ads than on any other medium. We have twice the number of attention being paid to podcast ads than that to TV. And finally, 51% of listeners of a podcast ad have said that either they bought or tried that product or service. So these are massive, massive numbers. In this attention deficit economy, a podcast listener is like your oasis or fountain for an advertiser to go to because it's like a very highly attentive audience. Like Mantra earlier mentioned that podcast is the theater of the mind. So imagine that you are so engrossed in the story that when an ad comes, and a lot of times it's a hosted ad, you don't want to skip. You're actually paying a lot of attention to it. So that's the kind of audiences podcasts deliver. So how are we driving the flywheel in India? Some of these faces are quite well known. They were here on stage earlier. Some of them are in the audience as well. This photo is the launch event of podcasting when Spotify launched podcasts in India. So one of the biggest things that we are doing in this market is building an audience for podcasting, building the habit for podcasting. These are some of the campaigns that we've done. I will try and see if the video plays. I guess not, because the PPT must have got converted into a PDF. Anyways, so we'll just move forward. So that was my little attempt at entertainment, but now, we've missed that. Okay, so in terms of creators, we are doing a whole lot of things for creators because we believe that if you have more content, you will be able to attract more listeners. It's like your classic two-sided marketplace. You need a large number of content, and they will bring their listeners onto the platform. Podstart is one such program. We know that in India, there is a large number of creators. There are a lot of creators on YouTube who are running their content there. We work very closely with YouTube and Instagram creators and try and bring them onto Spotify. We've been doing this for the last 3 years and have met phenomenal success. Some of the images that you see there are of such creators, and we look forward to getting more and more of them. Then Spotify Managed Partner Program is for creators who are a little bit more established, who kind of have reached a certain scale, but are trying to figure how to get to the next level. And there we kind of run bespoke programs for them, teach them a whole lot of stuff, including marketing, reaching out to their audiences, content writing, and a whole bunch of other things. There are a bunch of announcements that we have on this, which will come subsequently. Today is not the time to make these announcements, but I think the Managed Partner Program is something that we are looking to scale in India because we need more and more creators. Then promoting content. I think Spotify as a platform is designed to help creators find their audience. And we have multiple ways in which to promote content. If you've seen a Spotify homepage, which is there, that right picture, and if you kind of just look and think about it, and if you go back to how you listen to content, like podcasts are long. They are not like 1 or 2 minutes or a few seconds, but sometimes they are hours long. And you get so engaged in it, and you want to listen to it, but you're not able to kind of finish it in one setting. So you have that session running. What that top section does is that it saves all your ongoing sessions. So when you go back to your Spotify, you can go back to any of your open sessions and start from there. We, of course, do a lot of banners and push out podcast promotion across our audience base. That helps discovery. We do a lot of work on social. We work with a large variety of creators and push out their content on social media. course, we run a whole bunch of recommendations on podcasts. Um, the other big part is creator tools. Um, we are a global business. We want to, and we are a tech-first business. We want to invest, and we continue to invest in creator tools because we want to make sure that our creators find it easier and easier to not just create podcasts, but kind of help build a community around that. So we have a creation platform called Spotify for Podcasters. If you kind of hit that on your search, you will get to it. We now have video on Spotify. So you could upload your show as an audio or as video, and it will work on both background and foreground. Analytics, of course, you need to see the numbers, and you need to look at detailed analytics for a show, and you get it here. And finally, community features, like you have polls and Q&A and a whole bunch of stuff, so you can engage with your audiences. Okay, I'm guessing most of y'all here know how podcasts get distributed, but just a quick primer. You have hosting platforms on which you upload your content, and then it gets distributed to multiple listening platforms. So like either from Spotify for Podcasters or Megaphone, you host your podcast here, and you can distribute it to Spotify and all other podcast platforms that we have in the country. S4P is for individual creators, whereas Megaphone is our enterprise solution. We are in talks with a lot of you people here to kind of host your content on Megaphone. And this is where, like, it's a good segue for me to get to the next section, which is on monetization. Because what we recently opened up was the Spotify Audience Network. What it does is that once you're hosted on Megaphone and distributed widely, you are building a huge audience base across multiple platforms, including Spotify. But you want to monetize it from one point. So what Span does is that Span kind of inserts ads into your hosted show, and advertisers are able to buy audiences on Span, so you can buy listeners across all platforms. So this kind of, for an advertiser, is a one-stop place to kind of advertise on podcasts. You can get scaled audiences across multiple platforms. And for creators, it's a great way to monetize their content. Of course, in terms of enablers, we have Megaphone. We have a huge sales team. I mean, by virtue of our music sales team, we have a huge sales team in place who are selling both music and podcasts. So in case any of you want to have a conversation with me, I'm here. We can talk more about that. And listening apps, like we distribute across multiple listening apps. So you don't have to worry about where your audience will be. So long as you are on that podcast, you will get heard. Your ads will get heard. And yeah, I mean, we have a whole bunch of our own shows as well as third-party shows which are on Span. So yeah, this is the scaled monetization solution that we have in market right now. In summary, we're here to expand the content and creator pool. We want to make sure that more and more people take to podcasting, and we can help them grow their podcasts, find an audience, broaden consumption. And finally, we are here to enable monetization. Span is our first step. There are others. We'll keep announcing them as and when the time is right. But we are here to drive the entire podcast flywheel. And we want all your help, all your support. And I'm sure through us, with us, we can make India one of the topmost countries for podcasting in the world. Thank you.